Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, we are going to talk about Victor Wembanyama missing the rest of the season with an unfortunate blood clotting issue. And then we're going to talk about the rest of the sophomore class this season in the 2024-25 NBA year. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? Me and my wife found out again yesterday what makes us so compatible, how we complement each other very well. I sent you and GMAC some pictures of an unfortunate accident that happened to our youngest. And the reason we complement each other so well is I do not deal with that stuff very well. So I get him to the hospital and my wife is like, Bryce, just go back home. I got this. I know you don't got this. I'll take care of it. The nice thing is, like, small town, my wife's a nurse. I literally just take him to her and like, hey, what do we do here? For the listeners, like he busted his head open and he's okay, multiple stitches, all that. But it was just like, you know what? This works pretty well because I do not do well with blood, with stitches, with kids crying about blood and stitches and shots and all of that. So good reminder about the chemistry there between our marriage.
I love it. That's so good. The first thing I want to talk about real quick, basketball wise, before we dive into the Wemby thing. Did you see this Kevin Willard quote about Derik Queen earlier?
I did. Here's my thing, Sam.
As college coaches just be talking.
So I understand wanting to defend your guys, protect. I get it. Like, as a former coach, someone that still coaches high school football, I understand it. This is just like, it's not even true. Like, if you want to defend Derik Queen, that's fine, but this is a ridiculous statement.
So the statement is from Kevin Willard. If he was European and white, he'd be the first pick in the draft in regard to Derik Queen. He gets a little penalized because he doesn't have the greatest athleticism. He has better ball handling skills than most guards. That part I agree with, actually. I think he's quite good as a ball handler. He's like a 15-year vet in the fact that he knows and understands the game. I agree with that too, actually. I think that he just has like an innate natural feel. Here's the thing, Bryce, I don't know.
We also agree with the first sentence of the second part that he doesn't have the greatest athleticism, right? We also agree with that.
Totally.
Okay.
So I don't know. Did you see my tweet earlier, Bryce?
I saw the quote tweet. I don't remember specifically what you said, but.
So do you know who the last European big was to go in the top 10?
Bender, right? Is what your tweet said.
It's Dragan Bender. Do you know who it was before that?
Darko?
Because like Bender was like there was an idea that Bender might be like a 3-4 at like 7 foot, right? Like there was like a real, all right, this guy might be like a combo forward who is skilled. And then he got to the NBA and it was like, no, absolutely not, guys. Like,
so was it Darko before that?
It's Porzingis is the last one to go in the top 5. I don't think there has been one to go in the top 2 since like 2006 or something. Like it's like a crazy long time. So 2 things on this. A, I think college coaches get this like bee in their bonnet that European NBA players get this benefit of the doubt in the way that college prospects don't. Honestly, the ones that are like not athletic, the European guys, they get questioned more than anybody coming into the league. And that's just straight up. They absolutely get questioned more than anybody across the world. How do I know this? Because fucking Alperen Şengün won MVP of the Turkish league, which is a better league than the Big Ten. Sorry, college coaches. The Turkish league is a professional league where there are professional basketball players who were probably like all conference Big Ten players of the year playing in that league at 30 instead of at 22 when they're even better. That guy went 16th. He won it at 18. Derik Queen's 20. Like, all due respect, I like Derik Queen a lot as a prospect. He's probably, I just did the draft guide profile this week. Like, he's probably going to end up right around like the top 10 for me, which is going to be higher, I think, than where a lot of people have him. I really like Derik Queen as a player. Alperen Şengün was a year and a half younger, won Turkish League MVP, and went 16th. And that's the guy that, like, he gets compared to a decent amount, right?
Yeah.
Luka Doncic won MVP of EuroLeague at 18 years old. He went third. What are we doing? We don't have to do this, guys. I promise. We just don't have to do this.
He could have got his point across without saying something ridiculous like this. And again, I understand wanting to defend your guys, wanting to promote your guys, all of it. I get all of it. I understand what he wants to do, especially if Queen is all of the things he's saying and is a great kid and been great for the program and all of that. I understand it, but you can do it without saying things that are ridiculous. And it's just like, here's the truth. I think it's a scary archetype because, yeah, if you're Nikola Jokic or even Şengün or Sabonis, it ends up pretty good. But what if it's not? What if he's not those guys? What if he's not that level of processor and passer and hub of the offense that those guys can be? And it's just like, I don't know. It was frustrating to hear because it's just like, this is a ridiculous statement. It just is. And listen, I don't know Kevin Willard from anybody else, but like, it struck me as not necessary is how it struck me.
No, I agree. Do you know who gets the benefit of the doubt more often, by the way, than European bigs? American bigs. James Wiseman played 2 college games. He had all the tools in the world. He still went second overall. I just, oh boy. Oh,
I was going to say, yeah, I feel like a lot of, yeah, I don't know. It just, I'm with you too. Like, I have Derik Queen. I don't know if he's like number 10, number 11, something like that, I think, on my board. I think he's really interesting.
1000%. I want to be so clear about this, like, in regard to Derik Queen himself. Nothing I say is a reflection on Derik Queen as a basketball player. Like, Derik Queen is a really interesting player and like a really, like, I genuinely think like he's going to be a productive NBA player for sure. Also, do you know what might help his draft stock? Or it might hurt it, by the way. Maybe if you stop pre-switching everything in ball screens and like just had him camp out in the paint, maybe that would like help teams understand where he is defensively. Or are you doing that because, you know, he has limitations? I would argue probably the latter, right? It's fine. It's okay. Like, I promise. This is actually a really good comment from Noah Casper. Why didn't Sandro Mamukelashvili go in the top 5 when Kevin Willard coached him then? Like, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it's pretty funny, and I laughed at that for sure. So, yeah, look.
Here's the other thing. Like, don't say number 1, Sam. Don't say number 1. Because I'm sorry, the number 1 pick in this draft definitely plays both ends of the floor. Like, that's, you know what? If he would have said,
I didn't even think about that for what it's worth yet.
If he would have said top 5, I don't know that I would have thought it was as ridiculous as a statement. Because if I'm Kevin Willard and going, man, Derik Queen's been really productive. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper's team isn't even 500 right now. And VJ has had these struggles, and Kasparis has, turns the ball over all the time and all that. Okay, cool. I don't agree with you, but I can have a little bit more of the conversation. You can't tell me there's a world where two-way wing forward Cooper Flagg isn't the number 1 pick compared to Derik Queen. And it's because Derik Queen isn't a white European player. Like, that just, there's no world where I would agree to that. So, like, again, he could have got his point across without saying what he said. And maybe he was like purposely trying to be, I don't want to say dramatic, but over the top by saying the number 1 pick. Like,
I'm sure he was.
trying to prove his point. But still, like when you say something like that, this is how people are going to critique the statement. And he knows that as a college coach, that this is what it turns into. And I'll say it one more time. He could have got his point across without saying exactly what he said.
Yeah, I think that there was a smarter way to go about it than what Kevin Willard did.
And here's the other, I think now it just puts more pressure on Derik Queen, which maybe Derik Queen doesn't care, but now there's people who like probably weren't even watching and whatever that are like, if Queen has a bad game or something like that, they're really going to tear him apart. And to your point, he's a really good player, probably definitely a lottery pick in this draft. And I'm really fascinated to see what he looks like. It changes the conversation now, which I hate.
Yeah. And again, like I want to be very clear. None of this is a statement on Derik Queen, who's a really good basketball player. And it's a wild ride. It's a wild ride. Okay. Let's get to Wemby.
Yeah.
Victor Wembanyama. This is a shitty thing to wake up to this morning on my end. The San Antonio Spurs today announced that Victor Wembanyama has been diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder. The condition was discovered when Wembanyama returned to San Antonio following the All-Star game in San Francisco. Wembanyama is expected to miss the remainder of the 2024-25 season. The team will provide updates as appropriate. So, two things here. So first, Wemby, get back soon. Like we hope that he is okay. We hope that he is going to be able to get through this. Blood clots are really scary. Like they just are. And the reason that he will have to miss time now is that he has to go on blood thinners. And like, if something was to happen in a basketball game where he like gets a cut, like it'd be very dangerous for him at that point, where if it was like a particularly deep cut where like blood is like flowing, it would then be very, very difficult to, stop the bleeding at that point. And then he is at risk. So for people asking like, why can't you play when you have a blood clot or, when you're on blood thinners, that's the concern from the team side. You dealt with this obviously throughout the last year with Ausar Thompson. So the second thing here is that like everything I've seen in terms of the reporting from like injury specialists like Jeff Stotts, everything I've seen from guys like Ausar Thompson, Brandin Ingram, etc. Like these guys do tend to come back and like it's not an issue at the very least. Like Brandin Ingram, from what I know, has not had another blood clotting issue. Like not every issue is like what happened with Chris Bosh. You know what I mean?
Bosh was like a genetic thing they figured out. If I'm, I hope I'm speaking correctly. I don't come on here and pretend to be a medical expert of any kind, but I tried to read on this stuff today, and it sounds like Bosh, he kept getting clots, and they figured out it was some sort of genetic type thing. Where you mentioned Brandin Ingram, and this is compliments of Jeff Stotts in Street Clothes on Twitter. You guys should absolutely follow him for stuff like this. Ingram had a very similar, if not the exact same thing, in I believe 18-19, around the same time, missed the rest of that season, and then came back, and he actually started the 19-20 season healthy and playing. And there was a video I found on YouTube where a medical professional was taking his quotes from an interview where BI was talking about, okay, this is what I felt. This is what we did. This is why I couldn't play when I was on blood thinners. This is what I had to do to get back and those type of things. So there's a lot of resources out there. If you do want to understand it a little bit more, it sounds like the best case scenario is this is like that situation, not something more genetic where, hey, this could pop up again and again and again. And my thoughts with Victor are just that thank God they caught it, right? And he's going to get it fixed. And hopefully for him, his health, his basketball career, it's an isolated thing that came from, again, I don't want to get into the details of the rib and all of that stuff. I can explain it well enough. And it's not a genetic thing where these may continue to pop up and happen.
Yeah, just strongly agree. Like, I just really hope that this isn't a thing that continues to pop up. I mean, if they're calling it like a deep vein thrombosis, that makes me think that they currently think that it's not a recurring issue, but it's scary, obviously. And, Victor is just such a different body type that I think anytime that something like this happens, obviously there's just a concern that will be, not unfairly, in my opinion, raised, because like human beings are not meant to be 7'4", unfortunately. So all the best to Victor. I mean, the thing that this does now is opens up the race for the 5th spot on first team All NBA, and it opens up the Defensive Player of the Year award, because Victor Wembanyama is going to end up playing how many games here? It's going to be 46 this year. Not going to be eligible for Defensive Player of the Year. Not going to be eligible for All NBA. And by the way, like real quick, before we dive into what this means for those races, I am not somebody that thinks Victor Wembanyama should win Defensive Player of the Year if he plays 46 games.
No.
Like, if there was nobody else around the league playing defense, it would be one thing. But Jaren Jackson, Evan Mobley, like there are a ton of really, really good defenders across the league that are well deserving of winning Defensive Player of the Year if, they play 75 games or whatever. There's just no argument for Victor to win Defensive Player of the Year at 46 games this year. I'm sorry. He should not win it if he plays half of the games in a season.
Yeah, I think there's a number that may be less than 65 where you could have that argument about some
if
awards.
He had played 60, it would be something.
Correct. I think about like Rookie of the Year, right? Like, think if some player came in as a rookie and just dominated in their 60 games, and they're up against the rest of a field that, averages 7 less points and, something like that. Like, there are awards where the games played. Hey, you know what? I think he was actually more impactful in his 60 games. And when you factor in minutes and stuff like that as well, I don't think the number that we've seen from Victor is quite enough to really have that argument. If it was 55, maybe you could have that argument that like he was so much more impactful than a Jaren Jackson Jr. or an Evan Mobley. But to your point, I think those guys have been impactful enough and have been good enough, and the team defense is good enough, and the kind of the linchpin of those defenses. I have no problem saying these guys are Defensive Player of the Year worthy. This sucks for Wemby. Hopefully he's healthy, as we've already mentioned, and he's going to get other chances to do it. But yeah, I don't think that the gap is so wide. That would be like a multi-tier gap where he was just so much better that you would even consider it in this many games. Go ahead, because I want to make another point about All NBA stuff as well, but not yet, I guess, until you're done with this.
So my point on Defensive Player of the Year, and we can just talk about this, is like Jaren Jackson Jr. to me is like very clearly the favorite for this award now. I'll hear out a few other names. Like I'll hear out in a Amen Thompson case. I'll hear out an Evan Mobley case. I will hear out a few other players probably, but Jaren is like very clearly the favorite to me now. He's been unbelievable this season as a defensive player and would be very worthy of winning this award for the second time.
Yeah, I would just like, he was second on my list as I look through our awards from, whenever it was ago, our mid-season awards. Amin was in my top 5. Evan Mobley was in my top 5. Suggs actually was. I don't think Suggs probably has a real chance, and I think games played is going to become an issue with him as well. I think it's probably a Jaren Jackson versus Evan Mobley conversation, depending on how good the Rockets / Amen Thompson are down the stretch. I don't think Rudy probably gets in the conversation again. Bam, probably not. The name I wanted to throw out, especially as we get to the All NBA fallout, Anthony Davis is at 42 games played, 43 games played right now. And who knows how much he's going to miss, right? Like games played is going to come up with him as well. So yeah, I think it's probably a Jaren and a Mobley conversation.
I think that's probably where it settles. And oh, by the way, for All NBA, like first team, this opens up an All NBA spot, which for some of these guys on the borderline where there's a lot of money on the line, potentially, that's very, very important.
Yep.
Number 2, I think I would have Jaren first team All NBA right now.
Okay, so that's what I was gonna. So that's why I brought up Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis isn't gonna make the games, right? Like, 50. I guess he could still. No, he's probably not. So
Anthony Davis. So like Anthony, but like the Lakers have been terrible on defense this year. Like up until
no,
then,
for
and like,
all
now he's gonna be on
NBA.
Dallas,
No,
but, like,
all NBA.
yeah, like I don't know if he's going to make it. So yeah, to your point, like it might open up 2 spots.
So that's where I was going. Is I was looking at my list. We both had Victor 5. Unfortunately, that's out of the equation. My next group was Donovan and Anthony Davis, along with like Jaren Jackson, Anthony Edwards, some other guys. Like AD may have been the next guy, depending on what he went to Dallas and did. I don't think he's going to, I don't know that if he gets to the games now. And so then it's like, I think it comes down to a Donovan Mitchell versus Jaren Jackson versus, quite honestly, like, what do the Timberwolves do down the stretch? Does Anthony Edwards continue to, like, it really opens up the conversation, I think, is your point and the point I'm trying to make, along with, like, this almost guarantees Cade Cunningham, in my opinion, unless he, unfortunately, we get injured or something. And that's a big difference for him money-wise.
Yeah.
Like, he has that designated language that's going to be 30% of the cap. I just know for next year, it's $8 million for Cade Cunningham, what his number goes up. I think it almost solidifies him whenever you start taking away potentially 2 guys off this list.
And by the way, like Luka is also out of this running.
Yes,
too.
Luka. Yeah.
So like there are 3 dudes right there that are going to be missing all NBA, and you know, like who knows what happens here down the stretch, right? So, you know, really, really hoping that these guys stay healthy, but there are some spots up for grabs here this year, and there's a lot of money on the line to be able to do that. I think Michael McAfee asks like a pretty fair question here. It's crazy that there is not a single Thunder player being discussed when their defense is historically good. The problem with the Thunder in this argument is that their 2 best defenders are Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein, also who neither of whom are eligible because they've missed too many games already.
Michael, it's a great point. I guess I would ask you, tell me unequivocally who their best defensive player is then. Like that when you're talking about defensive player of the year, you have to unequivocally say that this player is the best defense. Because in our most recent, Sam, you had 2 guys, and I don't think you were wrong. And it wasn't even the 2 guys.
I had Jalen Williams and Lou Dort.
Lou Dort. Like, you're right. It is historically good. And I think there are a lot of very good individual defenders. But to your point, Chet has played now how many games? Like, there's no way Chet is going to get it because of games played. And where's Hard at? Where's I Hard at? He's at 34. Like,
yeah, he's already missed too many.
Yeah. So I guess that's my thing, is give me the name, I guess. And if you can say unequivocally it's Lou or it's J-Dub, then okay, but I don't know if you can do that because there's so many.
I can just about guarantee you that the Thunder will push Dort for this.
Okay.
I would guess. It's hard. Dort is better on the ball. Like if you just have like a sick one-on-one defender,
it's Dort.
I would say it's Lou Dort. Like if you need somebody to shut down the opposing team's best player, it is Lou Dort.
Yep.
In terms of scrambling around, in terms of like switchability, ability to fly around, play different positions, I think J-Dub is better than Dort at that stuff. And I think J-Dub is also quite good on the ball. I think I would probably, I guess, give Dort like the slight edge now that we're further away from like J-Dub having to play center. But I don't think, like, I'm sorry, I just think Jaren Jackson is a better defender. I think Jaren Jackson is incredibly switchable on the ball. I think that Jaren Jackson is unbelievable as a rotational weak side rim protector. He is carrying Memphis's defense into being one of the best defenses in the league, despite the fact that they've had a ton of guys come in and out of their lineup this season. Like, for them to be 7th in defense right now when guys come in and out of their lineup like this, like that's pretty wild to me. And by the way, like the other guy that we haven't mentioned yet that we actually do really have to mention, in my opinion, he has had a catastrophic offensive season, but Bam Adebayo has been really good on defense this year. Again, Miami is like a top 10 defense in the league, despite the fact that they play Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier,
Duncan Robinson,
like guys like that. Like Haywood Highsmith's a great defender, no question, but like Bam Adebayo is 100% in this mix too, depending on how they finish. Some of the perimeter players, like again, I'll hear out of men. I'll hear out like I think Dyson's a little bit lower on this than what some people do, but
I'm there with Dyson as well. A little bit lower. I am. So
yeah. But to me, it's just all of these guys are really freaking good at basketball. And like all of these Oklahoma City defenders are great at basketball. I don't know that there is like one that, I mean, I think I would say Dorton, J-Dub among the guys that are eligible. But the fact that Chet and Hartenstein are not eligible,
yeah,
realistically, Chet more than anybody. That's the big reason why. Like, I don't think somebody on Oklahoma City is going to win it.
I think the reward, if you're looking for them to be rewarded, and I don't think this is a bad way of thinking, for them being historically good defensively, is they get 2. And people may like, oh wow, 2 all guys. It's the hardest one I struggle with, Sam. Like I debated and worked and tried to decide who to put on there and who not to. It's what made me change my mind about like expanding the all-star rosters, because I was like, well, I would petition for there to be 3 all NBA defensive teams. So I guess I can't say that, hey, let's stop expanding to reward players. That's how many good defenders there are in the league. And if OKC gets 2 of those 10 spots, I think that's the reward for how historically good they are defensively. And I think it's the right way to reward them, because it is such a collective effort of defensive talent that does it night in and night out. So,
and again, just to be clear here, if we are saying Jaren Jackson wins Defensive Player of the Year, if he wins Defensive Player of the Year and does the things he's doing on offense, averaging 23 a game, 6 rebounds, 2.2 assists, like spacing big, mismatch nightmare threat, he is a very, very, very real first team all NBA candidate that like people won't look at it that way for whatever reason, probably because they undervalue defense in these conversations a bit. I mean, like him, Mitchell, totally in the ballpark here to me, like that, but like Jaren is very worthy of being in this conversation now.
It's going to be, it stinks again, because not getting 20 plus games of Victor the rest of the season sucks, and just his health in general. And that's one thing I wanted to say as well. Like when somebody breaks their leg, like Jaden Ivey, it sucks, right? You feel bad for him. When you see blood clots, like I instantly, like my heart sinks. I'm like, man, I hope he's okay. But
yeah,
this really opens up. It's going to open up a real conversation at that 5 spot between all of these names we're talking about. Or what if the Knicks go on a run post All-Star break that moves them into a certain spot, and Brunson or Cat go crazy during that stretch? Or again, I'll bring up Anthony Edwards if the Timberwolves make a move in the West. So there's 4 or 5 names there that will be really interesting. And I'm assuming ballots will be very split over when the time comes.
The last thing worth discussing here on Wemby before we move on and talk about the sophomore class in general is the Spurs have like a really interesting decision to make here, because they could decide to tank this year now. And I don't think that's a crazy choice if I'm them. They would potentially end up with both theirs and Atlanta's picks. If they could end up in a spot where you look at kind of where they are right now in terms of the order.
They're 10th, right?
Currently 10th. They are like 4 games back of 6th. They are 7.5 back of 5th. They probably can't get to 5th, I would say. But they might get to 6th.
For what it's worth, they have a top 11 strength of schedule. This is from Tankathon. This is just purely based off, I believe, win percentage, but 11th in terms of strength of schedule left in the NBA as well.
And right now, that would equate to 14% chance at the top 4 and a 3% chance at number 1 if they were to stay in 10th. If you're at 6th,
that changes
it's like
a lot.
35% to get a top 4 pick and an 8% chance to get a number 1 pick. I mean, can you imagine if they tanked this year and they got Cooper Flagg?
No.
Like that's kind of where this is now. If I'm them, I'm calling it. I'm sorry, guys. Like if I'm them, I'm calling it. on this thing. And I am going to get like an unbelievable, incredible like player potentially in the top 4. I think that's the way to play this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And this is why it's like, you know, you look at strength of schedules and stuff like that. And it's like what the number I just said probably doesn't even matter because, you know, I would just say from my perspective, I've been talking about how hard the Pistons' upcoming schedule was out of the All-Star break. Well, guess who they play on Friday? They play at the San Antonio Spurs. And it's like, well, that game just changed because Wembanyama is not going to be there. And so things can just change so much so quickly. And it's just crazy. And yeah, I mean, if you set Fox, they can probably do it, but I don't know how that all works with things now, but yeah, it sucks to think about, but there's nothing left for them this year. There's no fighting for the play-in, I wouldn't think, with what's left on that roster without Wemby.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't see that as being a worthwhile endeavor, in all honesty.
The other interesting, like, do you think Chris Paul would want bought out now?
So I had not thought about this yet. It's an interesting question.
Especially if they're going to consider the road you're saying.
Because where he would make a lot of sense is right up the road in Oklahoma City is their second ball handler.
Sure. And he makes his salary, is it low enough that he's more available to more teams, or is he above that number? He
is below the mid-level.
Like, yeah, so he's like his options would be robust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know.
That would make sense. I'm just saying. If you say De'Aaron Fox, like you're sitting out, and you remove Wemby and you remove Chris Paul, this team wins like 4 games the rest of the year.
Yeah. For what it's worth with the Paul thing, I think that would have to happen in the next like 10 days or so. He doesn't have to be on the team, but I think he has to be waived by March 1st, something like that. So that particular answer we would have fairly soon if it was in play.
I think it's a smart move for everybody involved. Go get Chris Paul a ring potentially, and the Spurs don't need him now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a fun one. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where that goes. Okay. Before we move and talk about the rest of the sophomore class, we have to shout out our good friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. We love PrizePicks here at Game Theory because of how easy they make it to get real money sports action. If you think that somebody is going to go crazy on the NBA slate tonight, you can pick over on their point total. If you think that Domantas Sabonis is going to go nuts rebounding the basketball this weekend, you can pick over on his rebounding total. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, Bryce. Let's talk about Wemby here as we dive in. The rest of the show is going to be breaking down the sophomore class. So the way that we have this slated is we want to kind of go down the order of the draft. So we'll go 1 through 5 and then probably like jump around a little bit is kind of the way I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
So we'll talk about Wemby first here. I mean, Wemby has taken the leap in every way imaginable this year and become a guy that to me was certainly in the top 5 for MVP potentially, certainly in the running for first team all NBA. I really think that what we had seen from Victor this year was like truly special. And it's a bummer that we don't get to watch it anymore this year. But if I'm the Spurs, I've seen everything that I need to see to know that, I'm in a good spot here with Victor.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows the scoring ability, which is up, the field goal percentage is up, the 3-point percentage is up. I know some people don't like that he's taking 9 3-point attempts a game, which kind of is a crazy number, but he was at 35% on almost 9 a game, good from the free throw line, rebounds, block shots, all of that. I think what I've really taken to, even going back to the Olympics, is just his affinity for the stage and the moment. And when you're Victor, when you're a number one pick, when you're the face of a franchise, possibly the face of an entire league at some point in your career, you have to have that kind of just like, not only do I understand the moment, I truly embrace this moment. And again, we saw it in the Olympics, particularly in the gold medal game. I thought we saw it on Christmas Day, and it just seems like something he's ready for at a young age. Like he just prepares everything for that. And so I think that's huge, along with, of course, the talent and the skill and the size and the defense and everything else. And the Spurs obviously thinking that he was more close to ready than not by the move they made to go get De'Aaron Fox, right? Like you don't go get De'Aaron Fox if you don't think Wemby is ready now. And so I think we'll see them continue to build out that roster to go win sooner rather than later, because they, and I think I as well, agree that he's ready to start winning now.
Yeah, and he was averaging 24 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, while averaging 4 blocks and a steal per game. It's just ridiculous how disruptive he is on defense. 48% from the field, 35% from 3, 84% from the line. He's essentially playing, I would argue, more like a wing at the 5, really, which is just how you want to weaponize a player like this. Like an NBA scout asked me a couple days ago, would you consider pairing like Common Maluak or Derik Queen with Victor Wembanyama in the draft? And I was like, no, I wouldn't, because the whole idea of what makes him so special to me, Wemby, is playing him at the 5 and having the ability to have like an elite level defense at the 5, while also being able to play fully 5 out with maybe the best like spacing center we've ever seen at the 4, because of his playmaking ability, because of his shooting ability, everything that he's capable of. So I think you lose the marginal advantage by doing that. But the way he has jumped as a shot creator this year, yes, a lot of it is just like willingness to fire from 3, right? Like they've fully empowered him and just said, go, you are our 3-point gunner. Like you are, as a trailer, just fire. If you're coming down the court with the ball in transition, feel free to fire. I also think he got better at dealing with contact balance as a driver this year. I think that he got a little bit better and a little bit more polished with like his mid-post game. I think that like we saw the incremental leaps as a shot creator that I was hoping to see throughout the course of the year. And that's why, if I was a Spurs fan, I mean, obviously this dude's just like incredibly serious about basketball. He wants to be the best player that has ever lived. He has the tools to do so potentially down the road. I would be very thrilled about the developments that I've seen from Wemby this year.
Yeah, as I was reading through my notes, I had multiple notes where I mentioned him playing through like second phase contact on his drive. And obviously he's going to get pushed off his line at times because he's so long. But, as he continues, he's never going to be bulky, right? Like he's never going to look like Giannis. But I think he can get to practical strength, practical balance. And after a year and a half in the league, he knows exactly what that physicality is going to feel like and where he needs to get there to play through that. And I saw more and more of that. I also love, like, I know we can do on-ball stuff. And then that was another note I had, like, I'm going to miss this second half of the season or whatever, last third, I guess, Wemby, Steph Castle pick and roll reps where Wemby's the ball handler and Steph Castle is short rolling. And then he's your guy making decisions, and watching 7'4" Wembanyama hit these perfect pocket passes. But I actually like when they run him off ball actions. I like when they give him a pin down or a staggered or something like that on the weak side to come off of. Even just a simple like, hey, start on the block, pin down to the elbow, whatever. Give a little bit of space as he catches the ball. I'm always really interested whenever I see the Spurs run some of those actions for him. And I think it just speaks to his versatility as of being able to do on and off the ball stuff.
Totally agree with you 100%. Couldn't agree more. basically. So I don't know that we need to talk a lot more about Wemby. We've spent like 30 minutes on him now, basically. Let's go to number 2 and talk about Brandon Miller.
Yeah.
So Brandon Miller, unfortunately, another player that is going to miss a lot of his sophomore season. So Brandon Miller has a wrist injury. I think he has a torn ligament in his right wrist, and he is going to miss the rest of the season. He played 27 games this year. I would argue that I don't think Brandon took a step back this year. He certainly did in terms of like his shooting numbers or whatever. I don't know that we saw much improvement from where Brandon was at the end of his rookie year to where he is now, I think is what I would say. I thought he showed market improvement from the start of his rookie year until the end of his rookie year. I don't know that I've seen much of a jump from where he was at the end of the rookie year until right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. If you remember, I had him really high in our 24 under 24 and 24, expecting that kind of jump, right? Like not, and a lot of it for me, Sam, wasn't just the offensive jump, right? It wasn't just scoring more points and, being more efficient. And obviously he was scoring more points, but on not as a good efficiency. But it was, okay, can he be a true two-way wing? Can he really, really defend? I think he was still taking those matchups. Like he was taking a Cade Cunningham matchup when they played the Pistons and stuff like that. So I think there's still the potential there. Maybe we just didn't get enough games of it to really see if it was going to play out in practicality. And then there's still the concern of, okay, I believe in his 3-point shot. I know it went down this year. Listen, he was taking 11 a game at 36%. I'm not worried about that. I think he's going to be a mid-range shooter because that's what he did in high school as well. I think he's very comfortable in the mid-range. But to truly be like that big-time scorer, you got to be able to get to the rim and either finish or get to the free throw line. And it seems like that was still a little bit of a concern.
So he was tasked with a lot more ball handling this year.
Yes, sure.
In part because of like the Hornets roster construction. I think they think of him as a big 2.
Okay.
Like as a big, like shooting guard. He might think of himself like that too. Like every time he gets, like he got asked again, like who's the best bag in the NBA? He said, me and Paul George. Like disagree. Just straight up. I disagree. I think Paul George had a much more not this early in his career, to be clear. Paul developed this, and I hope that Brandon continues to work to develop this. But like, if he wants to play that role, he does need to keep developing that bag. I think he needs to keep developing the handle. He needs to keep developing, frankly, like the passing ability as well. He took a bit of a leap as a passer this year in terms of the assist numbers, but I also felt like the decision-making was still just like slightly off when I watched him. He had a lot more turnovers. Like he was being asked and tasked with a lot more, it felt like to me. So I get why those numbers are up, but I don't know that I saw like a ton of growth in terms of the way that he's actually seeing the court necessarily. Maybe that's the easiest way to put it. I think he'd be better playing the 3. Like if they were to get VJ Edgecombe or something like that in this draft, they were to get like a real 2 guard who could be like a secondary playmaker next to LaMelo, and then he can develop a little bit more slowly with like the handle and things like that, and his ability to make passing reads and like everything that goes into that. I think that would really help him a lot. I think that the Hornets going to get somebody else to handle the ball and not have him like in second units a decent amount of the time. It felt like to me have to carry the load a little bit. Like when he had some bench unit players out there as well. Cause like once Trey Mann got hurt, they didn't really have anybody else that could handle the ball even there. So I would almost like to see them. I mean, look, this is a season where the Hornets are clearly rebuilding and like they're, getting him as many reps as possible is probably not like the worst thing in the world. But either he needs to like take that next step, or I think it would help them to get another ball handler in there in Charlotte and just slide him down to the 3, where I think that like he could be really impactful, just taking advantage of different situations, being a second side ball screen creator, attacking different closeouts when they come onto a shot, being able to knock down shots in the way that we know he's capable of. But yeah, I just felt like he didn't take a leap at all as a finisher this year to me. He didn't really take a leap as like the playmaker I was hoping to maybe see. So it's an interesting situation with Brandin Miller right now.
Yeah, I'm just on B-ball reference, so not the synergy numbers. So like finishing 0 to 3 feet, the finishing percentage is up, but the number, like the percentage of those attempts of his overall attempts was actually down a little bit. And I think I'm with you. Like as we talked through this, I think I would be a little more inclined to let's take some of the offensive load off his shoulders in terms of having to be the primary creator, and let's allow him to have and save that energy for the defensive end. Like be this really true two-way player that defends really well on the other end of the floor. And then offensively allow a LaMelo Ball or a secondary creator to create catch and shoot opportunities. I think he is a good off the ball mover and relocator and understands those things.
So that is one thing I want to talk about, to pause on the off ball movement real quick.
Okay.
So I just pulled up the synergy numbers. Do you know how many half court shots at the rim he took this year?
Per game or total?
I mean, I can do both. Whichever one you give me is fine.
So let's say he 3 a game would be the range, I guess.
1.8 per game. And part of the reason for that is he is tasked with a lot in terms of creation, but he's also never been an active cutter. And it actually, like, it was a thing that I noted in the draft guide when he came out of Alabama. And I was like, man, like, I would feel a lot better about this if he was a willing and like active cutter baseline when he was off the ball, or if he was a lot more willing to just like 45 cut. I feel like he never really does that stuff. I mean, I can look up the cutting numbers on synergy while we're talking, but like, it just feels so few and far between. So yeah, like this year, the entire season, Brandin Miller took 6 shots off of cuts in 27 games that were tracked. Like, I think that would be a big value add to his game, just moving off the ball, not just to relocate around the 3-point line, but moving off the ball to find cuts and like find these little open areas.
Do you think that's a team philosophy though? We are talking about a team where 3-point attempts is a huge point and emphasis. And, you know, I guess my question would be, do you think it's just like a Brandin Miller thing that he's taking, you know, even per 100 possessions, he was taking 5 more threes per 100 possessions this year compared to last year. It's hard to also get cuts to the rim whenever you're trying to take 15 threes per 100 possessions. Do you think it's a Miller thing, or do you think maybe it's a team philosophy thing of like, hey, you stay out on the 3-point line and get catch and shoot attempts?
It could be both. I think is kind of where I'm at. The only reason I say both, because you're 100% right about the scheme piece of it, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and tell you otherwise. Like that is absolutely true. The scheme piece of it is a critical part of it. But like he's also just never done it.
Okay, yeah.
Thing.
And you mentioned that, right? Going back to the draft guide.
So yeah, none of this, like I still have like, I think Brandin Miller is like a world of upside and like has a real chance to be like an all NBA player down the road. And if you made me pick one player on Charlotte, I think I still would take Brandin Miller over LaMelo. If you maybe pick one of them, they don't have to pick one of them, luckily, which is good for Charlotte. But I still think I would trust Brandin a little bit more, because I think it's easier to build around that archetype than it is to build around LaMelo. LaMelo is more naturally talented than Brandin Miller. Like nobody's ever going to argue that, but I think it's easier to build around the LaMelo or the Brandin Miller archetype. But like to hit that archetype, he does need to improve the off-ball stuff, I think, is where I'm at. That'd be a real factor in my opinion. Yep. Okay. Next up, let's get to Scoot Henderson. So truly maybe the most interesting conversation that we will have today, in my opinion. I've done like a full Scoot video over on the YouTube channel. If you want to see where I'm at on Scoot after this like recent run of play over the last month, go find that on the YouTube channel. Really, really good, like fun breakdown of a player that I think is like making a real jump in front of us right now. This season, he's averaging 12 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 43, 37, 79. So the shooting percentage is up 5%. The 3-point percentage is up 4%. His true shooting percentage as a whole is up to 56%. That's only 3% below league average now. And if you look over the course of the last month in terms of what the numbers are, they're actually like pretty strong at this point. Since he had that like breakout 39-point game against Brooklyn, he had 16 against the Clippers. He had 21 and 11 against Houston. He had 25 and 8 against Chicago. He had 11 and 8 against Miami after that. He had another game with 25, 5 and 1 against Oklahoma City. He had 23, 5 and 7 against Orlando. Over his last 16 games, Scoot Henderson is averaging 15 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists versus only 2.4 turnovers, shooting 49, 45, 83. The 3-point percentage here is obviously a bit unsustainable. That nobody is going to make the case otherwise on that at 45%. But I think that his jump here has been pretty drastic. And I am excited about what that kind of shows now for Portland here moving forward and for his career. Because if the pull-up jump shot is falling in the way that it has recently, it opens up everything for the rest of his game.
Yeah, I mean, he's really interesting because if you just went to Scoot Henderson, B-ball reference, real GM, whatever, and looked at the raw numbers, it's like, well, he doesn't average more points. He averages the same rebounds, the same assists, a little bit more steals. Turnovers are down. Like, what's the big deal? But it's just so much better. It looks so much better. And especially when you actually look at the percentages. I think one of the biggest things for me as I was looking back at some stuff was I think you can see that he understands spacing and reading the defense, and the game was starting to slow down for him. And I think he gets to the paint. Like, you see his ability to get to the paint. And I even thought last year at times he was able to get to the paint. It was like
getting to the paint has never been the problem to me. It's always been the decision-making tree after that.
And that's what, like, you just look through some synergy numbers and it's like potential assists. He's in a 90 percentile. And you look at the finishing, like the rim finishing is a concern, right? It's still a concern. That's the number that doesn't look great. But the non-paint twos, the floaters, those numbers look good. Like, yeah, the 3-point shooting may not be sustainable, but his stationary catch and shoot number is really good. His 3-point dribble jumper is just under 40%. There's just a lot of numbers that look good for him. And when you watch him play, again, it's like, okay, he's touching the paint consistently. You see more consistent quality decisions. You see him hit the floater. You see some big games throughout him. And he's like, I wonder what's going to happen like when he consistently plays with the same big. I've watched a young point guard for a few years now develop chemistry with his big man and the trust. And I don't know that the rotations and the lineups are consistent enough. Maybe the numbers would say differently, but I just want I wonder what it'll look like if him and Klingon really develop great chemistry and he has this lob threat. The more I watch the NBA, especially pick and roll stuff, it's like that chemistry between you and your big is so important. Them flipping the screen.
So important.
Like, you watch guys come up and then they flip the side of the screen, or the defender goes under and then you immediately reuse. Well, if your big man doesn't flip his hips, you can't reuse the screen, Sam. Or the big man, like, oh, I got to stay here in the pocket, or I can't short roll too deep if they put 2 on the ball. Or again, I'm going to throw this lob, trusting my big man to be there. And I'm throwing it before he ever truly becomes open. I just don't know that he's played with a big man enough to develop that level of chemistry. And my point is, I think he'll look even better when he does have that.
No, I completely agree with you. So, like, the thing that's pretty fun about and really, like, it hasn't been Klingon yet. It's mostly been Ayton.
Yeah.
They actually have really figured it out recently. If you look at the like on-off numbers, when Ayton is on the court without Scoot, they're a -14% per 100. When Ayton is on the court with Scoot, they're a plus 0.5.
Wow.
Like they're actually like pretty good together. Like they have developed that synergy and they have developed that tempo together in terms of like timing when it, like, look, Ayton is not the best screener in the world. It drives me a little bit crazy how willing he is to just like slip and not make contact.
Yeah.
But like Scoot has kind of figured out how to play off of that a little bit more. And by the way, like Scoot in the 380 minutes he's played with Klingon, they're like a -10 in those minutes and they haven't quite figured out that synergy yet. I think to your point, them developing that synergy is going to be critical, and figuring out that synergy over the next little while. That's what's going to be really, really fun, I think, for Portland to watch, because you're already seeing the dividends of Scoot having played with Ayton now for a year and a half and kind of understanding how that looks every time.
Yeah, I just think the upside and the ceiling of him and Klingon is more. And I don't think either of us think Ayton is the future big man in Portland. Maybe I'll be wrong. If there's one thing we feel like Klingon is going to be able to do, it's going to be a set really solid screens. And then if they can develop that chemistry of, okay, let's rescreen here, or, hey, you set the highway screen whenever I snake this, you know, like all of those little nuance things. And you're right. It sounds like he has developed it with Ayton better based on the numbers. I just think it's more important for him to develop it with Klingon, because for me, that's where the long-term future is for the Blazers in terms of that 1-2 combination of a point guard and a big man. I also want to say I'm interested in his defense. I was going back to pre-draft in terms of like, I think there's a good point of attack defender in there with his strength, his wingspan, and those things. And you do see it in flashes. Like I'm still intrigued to see how good he can be in terms of just a point of attack defender. And I think he has a little bit of matchup versatility because of those things I mentioned with his physical tools. I'm not talking like all NBA level defense stuff. I'm just saying, I think there's a quality point of attack defender in there that he could be as well.
Yep. I don't know. I think that's a relatively positive conversation on Scoot. Like I am relatively positive on him right now. He is a 21-year-old guard who literally just turned 21 2 weeks ago, like figuring it out in the NBA. And
you say it all the time. You tell people
forever with small guards. It takes forever.
There you go.
There is one small guard, one and done player in the last decade who has been good as a rookie. There is one. It's Trae Young. There is literally only a single one of them. It takes these guys forever to figure it out, and that's okay.
Yep.
Okay. Number 4 is Amen Thompson. I mean, this is my like child. I love him unconditionally. He is like truly. You need to talk, because I don't know if I can talk about him more than I already have. I've done like 3 Amen Thompson videos on this channel already this year, just because I'm like, oh no, this is like a star. Like this is the guy. This is it, baby. Like you can just see it.
It's hard with Amen because we've given him so much love, right? Like it seems like any episode we do, somehow we find a way to work in Amen, whether it's talking about the Rockets or it's talking about whatever. I will say, I think one of the biggest things that I watch when I watch the Rockets and Amen is how he attacks space. And I think he's figured it out in a lot of situations, because people are going to give him space because he doesn't shoot the ball. And there's just been a lot of really impressive reps in which he does that. And then the defense is so impressive. It's even the little things he does. There was one in this Grizzlies game where he's on the weak side and Zach Edey's going to get an offensive rebound finish. And Amen goes up and tips the ball away from Edey. And along with that, this is where the athleticism comes into play. How many guys have the athleticism to go up and do that from behind Zach Edey at how big he is? And then the off-ball disruption. Like we talk about defensive impact in terms of big guys, the Rudy Goberts, the Victors, the Jarens, they change the decision-making process of the offense. Amen is able to do that with the way he plays in passing lanes and block shots from behind and those type of things. And when you can force an offensive player to have to map out where you are at specifically on the floor because you may steal the ball or you may block a shot, that is impactful. And that's how I assume he lives in offensive players' heads with what he does on the defensive end.
you have to be so cognizant of his athleticism
Yep.
at all times on the court. The other thing that, speaking of the defense now, what he does is transition defense to offense as well as I feel like anybody in the league right now. His ability to go from 0 to 100 after he gets a rebound and pushes. And by the way, he's a monster rebounder. Like now that he's entered the starting lineup, his ability to grab and go, his ability to create steals and get pick sixes, his ability to do just like all of these little things, man, he is really, really good. The way that he is able to transition defense to offense is such a value add. And I think it goes so underrated. It's one of those things I've been looking at, like with draft prospects this year, particularly, is like, okay, how many of these dudes really transition defense to offense and get the most out of their athleticism, right? Cooper absolutely does it.
Sure.
Like Cooper is a stud with it. There are a couple other guys that I think are quite good with it. I actually think Kasparis is really good with it because he's really good at finding hit ahead passes, despite not being an elite athlete. Like the way that Amen does it is just like, I am the best athlete in the planet or on the planet. Basically, I am going to go and create this play and you cannot stop me. You can't get in front of me. I'm going to go around you. I'm going to go through you. I'm strong enough to go through you. These dudes are like 225 pounds, the Thompson twins. Like, good luck, guys. Good luck dealing with them.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to watch. And just, I think another thing with him, and yes, the handle has to be tighter and some of those things, his body control as well. And, when we transition into Ausar, I think that's one difference between the two right now is Amen does have better body control when he's attacking this space and how he gets there and takes contact and those type of things, especially in the half court. For me is when it shows up between the two. And I think that's why it always stands out whenever I watch Amen.
Yep. So the question here is like, I think he is their best player long-term at this point. Look, he's 22 years old already, and that's not old, but he's not like Scoot age. He's not some of these other guys' age. Like he's a full year older than what like the draft class would typically indicate, right? With that being said, if he is going to be their best overall player, I do think he probably does need to continue to grow as an offensive like creator in some sort. Like there are games, like for instance, the game right before the break against Golden State, he was not particularly good offensively in that game. Like he really struggled, it felt like to me, to create opportunities. I thought he turned it over a decent amount. I thought he felt like sped up dealing with a lot of different kind of moving parts coming at him. It needs to be just like a little bit more consistent, but like in the games leading up to the Toronto and the Phoenix games where he like kind of struggled later on, 18 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 1.5 blocks, 54% from the field, and 74% from three, by the way. If he can get like a little floater consistently, he had like a few that he's made recently, starting like with the Boston game and then like continuing down that road a little bit later. If he can start to make like a floater consistently, a mid-range jumper consistently, it's going to open up everything. Like the spot up 3-point shooter from the corners, like that would be amazing too if we could get that. It doesn't need to be like pull up threes from above the break. I think like a mid-range jumper floater, spot ups from the corners, that would be huge. And somebody asked, like, if Amen's the guy moving forward, how do you square that away with Şengün? I had as many questions about this as anybody coming into the year. I am no longer worried watching those two. They play off of each other so well, and it's because Amen is literally, you couldn't build two more polar opposite players in a lab than Brandon Miller and Amen Thompson. Right? They're both like 6'8", whatever they are. Brandon might be a little bit taller, but Brandon is like purely perimeter and doesn't really cut and doesn't really move off the ball except to relocate for threes. Amen, that dude's cutting everywhere. If Şengün has the ball within 15 feet of the rim, I feel like Amen is trying to find a route to cut in order to take a defender away from Şengün or just to open up a potential avenue for somebody else to get an open shot, even just pull defenders away from what they're supposed to be doing through his sheer athleticism. And again, because he's so athletic, you have to know where he is at all times on the court. So yeah, I think that the fit is not only fine, I actually think there's like synergy there in a real way now, because Şengün is so good at finding him and he's so good at driving and dumping off to Alperen. Like, yeah, it's all on the interior, but it might be two of the like smarter interior passers in the league working off of one another.
Yeah, listen, I go back and forth about like two non-floor spacers. I think, you can definitely survive with one guy. Can you survive with two? And I think the only possible way is for them to be high-level processors and really good passers. And I think to be able to work off of each other the way you're talking about, right? Like not just good passers, but playing with each other. And especially I think what happens sometimes, and again, I know we're about to transition to this, is like Ausar and Jalen Duren will cut into the same space at the same time. And that's why it's an issue, because they're both trying to cut to the middle or they're both trying to get to the dunker. If Şengün and Amin can operate in different space where Şengün's like at the free throw line and then Amin is playing on the baseline, and especially with Amin's athleticism, he can still make it work because he can catch lobs that literally other guys just flat out can't. So you can throw things to him over the defense that other guys aren't able to go get. And I think that's where it works. If not just the processing of passing to each other, but also moving off of each other so you don't end up in the same spots.
Yeah, and maybe that's so here, like to finalize the conversation on Amen. Again, if you maybe pick one player on the Houston Rockets moving forward, it would be Amen Thompson. Amen Thompson is an elite defender, an elite cutter, a great finisher at the rim. He is developing as an on-ball player very quickly. He's an unbelievable processor of the game. I have like full faith in that dude. If I was doing a redraft, like very clearly goes number 2 to me. All due respect to Brandon Miller, who's also been really, really good to start his career. I feel like that conversation is probably a little bit more down than like it probably could have been. I still think of Brandon Miller as all NBA upside. I am at the point now where I would bet Amen Thompson makes an all NBA team. Like I feel quite good that Amen Thompson will be an all NBA player at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, the Rockets, young player hierarchy, ranking tiers, whatever, is always a fun conversation. Feel like it gets Rockets fans riled up, and I appreciate their, passion for their team. I think that's where I'm at as well, based off what I've watched recently. We'll see how it plays out. It seems a little bit premature to go with him, but man, what we've seen, and especially the floor, considering what he does defensively, it's hard. It would be hard not to have him number 1 with that group. But I would understand people who still thought Alperen, I guess. But man, Amin, it seems like, has a chance to be super special.
He has a chance to be just like totally unlike. Yeah. Like he might be like 6'7" Russell Westbrook. Like that might be a thing here. Like Russ in his second year was at like 16, 5, and 8 and like wasn't nearly as efficient as the men. And like he was more of a point. I get it. Like they're different players. They're different in the half court. They're different in the way that they get their shots, right? Like, but Amen's at like 14, 8, and 3 right now over the full season, let alone that little run that I called out a minute ago. He's shooting like 54 from the field. Like he's getting to the line. Like he is really, really difficult to deal with, man. I am such a big Amen Thompson fan. There's just like, and like, he's a super serious minded individual. Like he cares about this game. Like he cares about basketball. They've been so locked in on being great basketball players from the time that they were so young. Like, yeah, like that. There are probably not 10 players, 25-ish and under, that I would take over him right now.
Yep.
Like I would take Giannis over. Like, if you take, Jokic is 30, but like Jokic immediately makes you a contender, right? Like I would take Jokic for the next 5 years, right? But yeah, no, Amen is a joke. That guy's sick. So let's talk about his brother now, Ausar.
Mm-hmm.
I want to let you talk about the leap that you've seen recently in terms of the on-ball stuff, because I agree with you. The off-ball stuff drives me insane. When he is playing away from the ball, it feels like him and Jalen Duren just are in the same spot all the time.
Yeah.
And to me, like, that's probably on Duren as much as honestly, I think it's probably more on Duren than it is on Ausar. But also I think it's on JB. Like, when I watch them, it feels like JB is not doing a good job of keeping them on different sides of the court. Like, if I was JB, I'd be like, all right, I want to keep Duren on like one side of the court, Ausar on the other, so that when Ausar is cutting into an area, there's at least a little bit of separation between the two of them. Because Ausar, like we talk about Amen being like the super active cutter, Ausar is as well. Like, he has no problem cutting to the rim. But look, you're the Pistons guy here. You've watched Ausar much more than I have even. Like, please just give me the full rundown on where you're at with this.
Yeah, no, I mean, you explained it pretty well there in terms of how they cut into each other's space. And it just, I think it's the team in general trying to figure out how this works. And just in case people have forgotten, Ausar dealt with his own blood clots going back to the end of last season, all off season, and did not start the season playing. And so this wasn't the rotation and the roster this team played the beginning of the year with. And now he has eventually got into the starting lineup and stayed in the starting lineup. And you have these two complete non-floor spacers in Ausar and Jalen Duren. And you'll see it with other guys like Tobias Harris is, running one of his mid-post isolations. And, Ausar's man is standing in the lane and you can see him just waiting for Ausar to cut, but him and Duren are on the same side. So it's like, all right, Duren, you got to get to this spot. Ausar, you got to cut to the right spot. And it just, the timing of all of it hasn't always worked. Now, what is exciting is he is a very willing cutter. And like, once they figure it out, I think it's going to work okay. And we've seen flashes of defense
or move the bigger one.
We've seen flashes of putting two on Cade, Jalen Duren short rolling, catching. Here comes Ausar cutting on the baseline. They finish. What's been intriguing before the All-Star break, Sam, was the on-ball stuff. Like, they legit played Ausar as the point guard the first 6 minutes of the second Bulls game. So they blew the Bulls out by like 50 one night. They played back-to-back the next night. And I think JB just said, you know what? Let's see how this looks. And it does take a little bit of workload off Cade's shoulders. The ball gets back to Cade, make no mistake about it. But Ausar being able to do just a little bit of that. And you talk about turning defense into offense, Ausar can do that. Like, he has consistently through his minutes this year pressured the defense in transition, and he's really good drawing defenders and making passing decisions in that specific situation. The other thing he did, and I believe it was the blowout Bulls game, he showed that ability to attack space, Sam. So he attacks Buzelis, bullies him, and then just finishes over the top. Then the next time he looks like he's going to bully him, spins off of him, puts him in the spin cycle, finishes, and then he bullies Kevin Huerter later. So he's like learning this. I can bump dudes. Oh, now there's space. And then I'm just way more athletic than you. I will take one step into that space and jump way higher than you can jump and finish. And those are the processes that are starting to get exciting in the half court, being able to attack space, get to the rim, and finish.
Where are you? Look, I don't need to add a whole lot to that. Like, you've watched him much more than I have. And I haven't gotten to the Bulls game yet. Like, that's on my to-do list. I've been like really trying to focus on draft guide stuff this week. So that's why I haven't released the Ausar video. I've literally recorded an Ausar video. It's uploaded into the YouTube system. I want to watch the on-ball stuff before I really, release that. Because a lot of it was off the ball and a lot of it was like him cutting into the same space as Duren, and like it was driving me crazy. But the thing I wanted to talk to you about is the defense. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I think there's a case that he is better than Amen on defense. Like, he hasn't played enough minutes this year. He's not eligible for awards, I think, because he missed too many games at the start of the year. Like, I don't know if enough people have really recognized how unbelievable he is on that end. I think I would put it this way. I think he is like a little bit more solid maybe like on the ball and like a little bit more consistent in his rotations, whereas like Amen is just pure havoc and like chaos, and they both fit what these teams want to do defensively incredibly well. I'm not disparaging Amen to credit Ausar in this case. They're just slightly different in how they go about it. But he is so good on defense, dude. Like he is, the more I watch him, the more I'm just like, oh, this is a different level dude as a defender.
Yeah, I think on the ball, when he's like settled and locked in, he's really, really good. My biggest critiques with Ausar on the defensive end, and I always have to put this in my notes because I don't want people to think I'm a hater, but I'm evaluating Ausar on the defensive end unfairly already as like, how does he get to all NBA defense level product, right? Impact. His biggest weakness right now to me is at times he gets a little lost off the ball and the offensive player creates an advantage. So like here comes the stagger on the weak side and he doesn't lock in early enough and the offensive player creates separation before the screen. And then now he's having to make up ground and he can't be as solid navigating the screens. Or the biggest thing is at times he'll overplay like a fake. So somebody will give him like a jab step to the right. And he's so athletic. He covers so much ground with one little movement that he completely gets out of the way. Now, again, Sam, it's very nitpicky, but I think it's a compliment that I'm evaluating him in this way and analyzing him in this way because of what the ceiling is, which is all NBA level defense. And he's shown all of the flashes. I've seen him disrupt guys, make guys' lives miserable. You can see the frustration. Like I thought he took Trae Young out of one of the Hawks games because Trae was just like, this sucks. Like, will you stop? just like leave me alone. And then the defense was even worse for Trae. Like he was getting cooked defensively along with the offense not being very good. The Bulls broadcast, I love listening to the opponents to hear what they say. We're raving about him. He's the first guy to the ball. He's always getting a hand on the ball. He's always deflecting it. He's always there. Sam, we've all played these guys. You know how annoying that is when the guy never goes away and he deflects every pass you throw and contests every catch? That's Ausar Thompson. And he's not even playing the minutes yet. I assume they're trying to be smart with his health. I have no firsthand knowledge of this, but like his rotations aren't like his impact isn't even as much because his minutes aren't what I think they will eventually be for this team.
Yeah. And look, like it's going to be interesting to try and figure out how to make him work because you can't play him on the ball all the time. You have Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham is a better option to play on the ball regularly than what Ausar Thompson is. It's not a slight at Ausar Thompson. Cade Cunningham's going to be an all NBA player this year. Yep. So figuring out how to make that work is going to be interesting. I also think that like Ausar is not quite as shifty on the ball is what Amen is. He just doesn't quite have that like that twitch. He's like flexible through his hips. Like he's capable. He just doesn't have the same level of special twitch that Amen does. And that's okay. But like there's a big difference there, I think, in terms of like on ball upside because of that. If you're not like when neither of them can shoot from three, which neither of them can shoot from three right now.
Correct.
There are significant marginal disadvantages to any other skills that you have, right? I think Amen is like slightly craftier and more creative as a ball handler in general. I think Ausar's handle is probably a little bit tighter, if I'm being honest, but like Amen, because he has that twitch, I think can be a little bit looser with it and can still make it work. I think that Amen is like a more creative passer in terms of like seeing different cuts, but Ausar is still a great passer. Like he's still going to average 5 assists a game at some point in a season. Like he's really, really good. I would be really happy with Ausar. Like I'm now at the point where it's probably him or Ivy that is their second best prospect. I'd hear out either. Like Ivy was playing really, really well before he got hurt this year. If you wanted to make the case for Ausar, though, I would absolutely hear out Ausar.
I'll hear out the Ausar as well. The reason I continue to push Ivy as the most important is Ivy, I think, is the one that has the chance to be your second scoring option to Cade Cunningham. And I think that's the next thing that the Pistons have to acquire is like a true second bucket getter next to Cade, like a more than 20 point per game, consistent type of player. I don't think that's who Ausar is. And I don't think you do either. Ron, if he is that, is multiple years away from it. Obviously, Jalen Duren isn't. And so I think that's where if Ivy actually became that, like, man, like if he's a legit 38% 3-point shooter, he's at 40% this season for people who don't follow the Pistons. If he's like legit that, and you have Cade and Ausar, like you got a really good foundation there. If Ivy's not, then it's like, okay, are you a 6-man third guard? Do we trade you to go get that guy? Those type of things where I think we're starting to really see what Ausar is going to be. And I think that's majorly impactful, but it's not what I consider to be the most pressing thing they have to figure out and fill, along with figuring out the center position, which is a different conversation.
Okay. The way that I want to do this now is,
okay,
I'm going to just like kind of ask you,
okay,
who you want to talk about next. Like, I think Lively is probably like the next, like you can make a case Lively is better than a couple of the guys we've talked about already. Certainly. He's probably like the next guy, but like, let's just open it up now that we're outside of the top 5. So, and just kind of like whoever you want to talk about.
I don't want to spend a lot of time here. I want to get your thoughts on Jarace Walker. He's been very interesting to me in Pacers games because he's been like disruptive.
I love that you went to Jarace Walker.
Well, so it's so interesting because I've seen him be pretty effective defensively, and like he's so active with his hands and he's disruptive. And again, like I know people get annoyed because my perspective a lot of times, even though I watch non-Pistons games and plenty of them, but like I watch him guard Cade and I'm like, holy cow, this is kind of interesting. But then offensively, I'm like, holy cow, that was a really interesting decision, Jarace. I don't know if you should have made that decision. And so I want to get your thoughts on this. And I've seen the great Caitlin Cooper like make some of the same, thoughts. And obviously she's the go-to for Pacers content. I just was curious. The GOAT. She's amazing. I was just curious where you are at with Jarace.
I thought in like early January, I thought that like, all right, we got ourselves a stew going here. We're rolling. Jarace is averaging like 9 points, 3 rebounds, playing like 15 minutes a night. He's taking his opportunities when they come to him. He's shooting like half of his shots from 3. He's cutting and finding like open areas of the court. All right, like we got ourselves a stew going here. Hasn't been as good recently.
Okay, I was gonna say let's
has been a bit messier recently. The decision making like is real. The driving choices like into traffic, the passes that he throws. I don't know if it's like maybe he thinks that like he should be playing more, so when he gets in, he's like trying to do so much. Maybe to like prove that he should be playing more. I don't know. He's a weird one to me. The defense is active. I think he makes wild choices on that end too.
No, so that's the other thing, right? Like he'll be disruptive and then he'll blow an assignment, miss a rotation, whatever. And it's just like, oh my gosh, come on, my guy. Like, there's so much intrigue here. It's just, here's a Euro step in transition that's beautiful. He knocks down a jumper. He has a great point of attack possession. And then he drives and takes an awful mid-range jumper, throws one into the stands, and then blows a low man rotation and gets subbed out of the game. And it seems like it's that roller coaster with him right now.
Yeah. I like the idea of Jarace. I like that he is already developing as a shooter. Like that is honestly like a really critical thing. The fact that he's at 37% from 3 this year and taking like a few attempts per game, I feel like pretty okay about where that is now. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is a place where you can build off of to me.
For what it's worth,
easier for you.
44% on stationary catch and shoot jumpers via synergy. That's a really good number for him, obviously.
1,000%. So when I see him, I'm pretty excited about where I think this could go, the decision-making process is such an adventure that like I worry that he is always going to have a limited role almost.
You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me, I don't know if this happens in the NBA or not. I know it did for me as a coach. You have a player. Every year I had a player where it's like 3 minutes. I can let you play for 3 minutes. Or it's like, okay, he did 3 good things. There's the 4th good thing. Coach, sub him out. Because you knew he was about to make a bad mistake. It's coming.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's what Jarace is right now, where it's like 3 minutes, that's it. Or it's like, oh, catch and shoot 3, great point of attack, great pass, steals a pass. Okay, we better get him out because the blown assignment and the pass to the stands is coming up next.
Yep, that's it. So
Cason's, we've talked about his defense whenever we talk about the Thunder.
Yeah, let's stop on Cason real quick because I did want to talk about Cason like a little bit more. So Cason Wallace, has been starter this year for Oklahoma City, like for most of the year, averaging 7 points, shooting 44, 33, 78. The defense is super high level. Like he is awesome rotationally. They are so tight in their scrambles, in their X outs, and everything that they're supposed to do. What have you seen on offense? Like where are you on that? Because like he is a bit smaller. Like he's, what do we want to call him? 6'3", probably 6'3" to 6'4", probably in that like middle zone of those two things. He's never been like a totally natural passer either, but like they don't ask him to play on the ball a lot. So I think he's a super processor. I think he knows how to play. He's a great defender. I don't know. Like I feel like he can shoot a little bit, even though it's been a little bit tough recently. Yeah. Like I don't know what to do with Cason on offense yet, because that's where the upside will come from. He's already so good defensively that like he's going to play in the NBA for the next decade. It's just, where does the offense come from to me?
Yeah, I'm with you there in terms of like, I think he makes really good defensively. I think he makes big plays and big moments. Like he's one of those guys that just seems to kind of understand what needs to happen in that moment. I think it probably just comes down to the shooting, right? Like I think it's telling, Sam, that we have consistently brought up the name AJ Mitchell as such a big loss for this team because they didn't have primary creation in the second unit. And
like Cason should be a guy that can bring that.
That's my point, is we say that they lost so much when AJ went out that they would be a great team to add Chris Paul. Cason's healthy and playing. And so the fact that we're just not saying, hey,
I mean, look, like he missed like the last 6 or 7 before
sure
All-Star, but yes, like your point is valid before then.
Yeah, he's played 46 games this year. But it's like, we're not saying, hey, Cason can do it, is what I'm getting at. Not that he can't pass, right? Like, I think it's actually kind of cool how they use him as like a short roll guy sometimes and stuff. Like those little unique things they do. I think for Cason, it really comes down to knocking down shots. And he hit 42% from 3 as a rookie, and he's at 33% this year. And so I think that's what he's got to be. To me, he is an off-the-ball guard at this point in his career. I realize this is very early in his career, but it seems like that's how OKC sees him right now. And if you're going to do that, yes, you have to be able to do the fun short roll stuff, cut, offensive rebound occasionally, all that. You got to knock down shots, right? And so ultimately, I think that's what's going to decide his impact in a playoff series is he knocking down shots, catch and shoot opportunities, because that's where he's going to live and his impact will be offensively.
Yeah, 38% from 3 in December and January. So, like, I guess he is making shots. It hasn't felt like he has for some reason to me. I feel like maybe I'm like overvaluing the last few games he played in like January or something, where like I feel like I saw him miss like a bunch of shots in my head or something. But yeah, like it really does come down to the offense to me, just like what he becomes. He's already so good on defense. Like he is awesome. He's tough. He's physical. He can guard big. Just even though he's 6'3", 6'4", like he can guard up the lineup. Like he's so strong through his chest and through his torso that like he's able to get up underneath guys and like cause problems in the way that you really hope that those smaller-ish guys can. Like, he's so physical, he's so powerful, like he's 210 pounds probably already.
Well, so
like,
real quick, Sam, here, because I was looking back through my notes and I referenced the poor shooting, inconsistent shooting as well. So I'll throw out October, 4 games, but for what it's worth, he did go 2 of 12. November, he was at 29%, 12 of 42. December, he was 33%, 14 of 42. So he started off the season 28 of 96 or something like that. And then in January, he went 17 of 39, 44%. So like the shooting was rough, but it has consistently gotten better through each month.
Okay. I want to go to Bilal Coulibaly next.
Okay.
Because he has been like genuinely fascinating on a bad team this year. And I was thinking early in the year that like the shooting might have come around a little bit early. It hasn't yet. Like he's shooting 28% from 3. And I love that they're just like telling him, go out there and fire, go continue to get your reps. Right. But man, like you can't have somebody that's on the worst defense in the league on all defense. I get it. He's a good defender, man.
So it's
that dude is like, I have not seen anybody defend Trae Young better than him this year.
I had a Wizards guy whenever we did our awards, like he didn't like really push it, but he was like, hey, Bilal should be in consideration here. And I'm just like, to your point, I don't think you can do it when your team is that bad, but he individually is very good.
Yeah, he is something, man. Like the way he is able to get into your space and crawl in and stay there at that size, he is a sick defender, man. He is a really, really sick defender. Now, offensively,
are you worried?
Am I worried? No, I'm not, because I didn't think that I thought it was a full project offensively. Honestly, if anything, I think the ball skills have come along a little bit sooner than what I expected. And like they have him like do a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more on the ball than kind of what I thought. Like he had a triple double against Brooklyn, like in early February, where he was like really passing and playmaking. Honestly, the passing has like really opened up, it feels like, with me. And
Sure.
I am like genuinely, now that Kuzma is like 100% gone, I am so interested to see what this looks like now with him.
Yeah. I'm not worried either, because I thought what he did, like the first 12 games of the season, he was at 15 points on 55, 37, 75. That was just way more than what I thought he would be, even in year 2. Now the last 30, well, this isn't the last 30 games. This was notes from the end of January. So there's been some more games, but then he went on a stretch where it was like 37, 24, 77 shooting splits. This will be interesting player development, Sam, because he's obviously being tasked with more than what he's ready for right now. So does that end up being a good thing, right? Like, does he learn and grow from it and able to develop, or does it somehow hurt his confidence, or is, something like that? I'm not worried about doing it that. I'm always just kind of interested in, when you put this on a player like him, where does it end up going? And so it'll be interesting to track, but the defense is incredible. And I think I do like that he's just getting this usage to try and figure out.
Yeah, over his last 31 games, so removing his first 20 of the season, he's averaging 13, 5, and 4. Like he's averaging 4 assists a game. And like there are like games in there where like he doesn't pass it. I think that like there are like so much of it is like roll for Bilal on offense right now. It's like it adjusts. So it like throughout the early portion of the season, at least in the middle portion of what we've seen so far, it adjusts so much because of like what Kuzma was doing that night, what Poole was doing that night, how involved Bub was that night, right? Like I feel like it's a moving target almost. Like it feels like some games they really have him be the guy. I feel like some games it's Bub, some games it's Poole. Like they almost like have them take turns, like getting a chance to experiment and explore the space and like really, find out who they can be. So like, I don't even know that the numbers.
Well, that's what
the role is so changing that like I don't know what to do with the numbers, I guess, when I watch him.
And we've talked about like how assists can lie. This team is 28th in field goal percentage and 29th in 3-point percentage. You know what you need to get assists? The teammate has to make the shots. And so, like, the passing, I think, for Bilal really needs to come down to a film study of really watching how does he break down a defense? How does he read the defenders? Is he making the right decisions regardless of the end result? Like, what does the process look like? And even then, you're talking about a team that probably has spacing issues when you talk about one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. So how does that change as eventually this team will add talent and floor spacing and make more sense?
Okay. Yeah, you give me a name next.
Keyonte George.
Pass. No,
No.
I
was gonna make
You
a
give
joke
me
about
your-
I was gonna make a joke about him not passing, but actually he's put up some decent assist numbers recently, so I can't make that joke.
honestly, like I think the passing is like what I'm most happy with in his game
Yeah.
so far this year.
Don't you think he's finally in the, like, they've been bringing him off the bench as a third guard? I feel like
Yeah,
I just feel like that's what he is. Like, that's where he needs to be. And
agree.
right? Like, I feel like that's his role. And I feel like he could be really, really good in that role. And there's nothing wrong with it.
I think it's helped him so much to like get a chance to see the flow of the game, get a chance to come in and just like be himself, not have to worry about getting his teammates involved, not having to worry about getting kind of everything rolling on his end, and having like a real point guard in there like Isaiah Collier, who, you know, is a rookie and is not going to be great all the time, but like has that mindset. You know what I mean? Yeah, Keyonte, since he's been coming off the bench, is averaging 17 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting 43, 32, 84. My issue with Keyonte has always been kind of simple. I didn't think that he separated well enough, and I didn't think he was quite as good of a shooter as what the hope was. Like, to be the role that he's going to have to play, you have to be elite as a shooter, not just like a good shooter. You have to be a great shooter. And I've always thought he was a good shooter, not like a truly elite shooter. I thought he was like a good contested shot maker that didn't always, you know, make the open ones at the level that you would hope he would make the open ones, I guess, and didn't separate enough to where like he was ever going to get easy shots. Like he never gets, like, it feels like he just doesn't get rim penetration enough or like paint touches. Like it's just hard for him to do those things. So I think he's probably a 6th man down the road. I think he'll probably be that guy. He's only 21. Like he's still really young, but yeah. And like, this is before we get to the defense. There have been stretches this year where I feel like it's been passable on defense for Keyonte, but like few and far between. Like he's had like maybe 5-game stretches where he's been like pretty okay at it, but like, man, the early season defense was like unforgivably bad, I felt like. And then like later, I feel like it's been like okay coming off the bench where he like doesn't have to focus on it quite as much, it feels like. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's real tough.
And for what it's worth, he wasn't efficient in his freshman season at Baylor either. Like, that's my thing with Keyonte as well. Whenever people were like, you know, like, yeah, he averaged 15 a game, but it was on 38, 34. And so then now we're into the NBA and we have 773 point attempts in a season and, you know, whatever, 2/3. He's at 33%. You know, we have 1,400 field goal attempts. He's under 40%. And I'm not saying he won't get better. I'm just saying that, like, between the shot diet, between, you know, ability to separate and those type of things, how much better does it actually get? I just look at the starter versus reserve numbers, and like his true shooting is better off the bench, even though his 3-point percentage isn't as good. But the assists are better, the turnovers are down. Like it just makes so much more sense. Be a third guard. I think he could eventually be really good in that role, especially if he continues to grow the passing, the decision making, figure out how to be a good point of attack defender. If nothing else, like at least stay in front, navigate ball screens, and maybe that's a role he can carve out and be successful in.
Okay. Next, who did I send us? Oh, we haven't talked about Lively yet. We have to talk about Lively. Like, Dereck has obviously missed like a good amount of time this year now because of the injury that he currently has, which is that like ankle, like, is it a stress fracture? Is it like a bad sprain? I can't remember exactly what it is. But like he's been out and he's going to miss, seemingly a bit of time here still moving forward. He's only played 32 games, but when he was out there, I loved those 32. He looked great. With Luka, he looked amazing. His ability to short roll pass, I thought had taken yet another leap this year. I thought he was even better on the interior defensively. Obviously, was finishing like 70% of his shots at the basket because that's who he is and that's what he can do. I liked that he'd kind of given up on the 3-point shot, honestly, because I've never been a believer in that for him. Yeah, like he's just he's an awesome player, and I am concerned for how it'll look when Luka is gone now for him.
Sure.
Because with Luka gone, and look, like, so here's one piece of it, right? With Luka gone, in theory, they don't have a lot of creators. So there's still probably going to be a number of times where teams put 2 on the ball against Kyrie, and a short roll is going to be available for him, right? But the problem is that, okay, we're going to short roll you. Well, you still have AD on the court somewhere, probably in the best lineups, right? So do you have AD in the short corner? Do you have him at the dunker spot? Do you have him in the corner, like spacing for a 3? My guess is you probably have AD as the guy that's going to be short rolling into that area. So what do you do with Dereck now?
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see how they go about crafting this offense when Dereck comes back.
So NBA injury reports, it is a right ankle stress fracture. Via that
stuck out in my head. Yeah.
Listen, I think his passing is the thing that always stands out. I've highlighted it multiple times whenever you compare like him on the floor with Gafford. You bring up an interesting point that now with this new roster, how much does that come into play? If you just go put him in the dunker and AD's that guy, what does that look like? But I think it's an absolute huge value add as a big man in what he does with his passing. Another thing I had made notes of multiple times early in the season was his ability to go score against mismatches. I think one thing I found myself getting frustrated with bigs are ones who can't just go post up the 6'3" guard that switches onto him, whether in a cross match in transition or a switch of a ball screen or whatever. And he was able to at least get there, catch, turn, shoot a little hook, score the basketball. I'm not saying you're running your offense through that, but I like to see bigs who can at least take advantage of that mismatch. And then the defense, just like some off-ball rotation, recovery blocks, all of that, really impressive. But you bring up an interesting point. How important is the passing in this new Mavericks offense when we do get to see it fully healthy with everybody on the court? Will be fascinating because I think it was one of his biggest value adds as a big.
Yep. Okay. You go next. Who do you want to talk about?
I mean, if I get a skip, I would like to skip to the second round and talk about my guy, Toumani Camara.
I was hoping you would bring him next. This is your guy. You get to bring him to the floor. You get to talk about it. He's a stud. Like, I don't mean that, I don't mean otherwise. Like, he is an absolute stud.
I mean, you talk about guys with all NBA level defense potential. That's him. Like, he has a chance to get there, and he's really, really good. He's disruptive. He guards the other team's best player. He protects the rim, plays with verticality. Again, he'll guard anybody from Paolo to whoever, like all of these different matchups. And then what I like about him, listen, there's concerns offensively, right? He's still got to figure stuff out with the jumper, all of that. I just think he's one of those guys that's like, you know what? You want me to play in the corner on the baseline? That's what I'll do. I'll go play in the corner. I will cut. I will offensive rebound. And whenever he knocks down shots from the corner at a high enough level, he's a really good, like 3-and-D archetype of player. I was looking up right now, just wanted to see where like his catch and shoot numbers were at on the season. So yeah, like 35% on stationary, 33% on movement, like just not quite there yet with what he needs to be. But man, he's athletic, he can guard, and I just love watching him play. Like he's one of my favorite guys to watch in the league. I know that's kind of nerdy, but it's true.
The reason that he's so good to watch is he is a joke on defense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man. There is a non-zero chance he's an all defense guy for me.
Yeah. I don't know if I've had someone reach out and say like, dude, you need to have him on your all defense team. That's dude, what I'll say.
It's real. He is a joke on that end. He erases dudes. Go ask Tyrese Halliburton about Toumani Camara. Like, shut him down to the tune of 0 points. Like, forget like, had single figures. He had 0. Goose egged him. Like, this dude is something, man. This dude is a special defender. With Vic being out now and with maybe AD being out of the mix for this too,
opens up some spots.
Very well might be an all defense guy this year. Like, that is a real consider. Like, I would have him ahead of probably Jalen Williams for all defense right now. I don't know if I'd have him ahead of Dort, but I probably wouldn't, in all honesty. But like, he's in that next group to me. He's so physical. He's so strong. He's capable of guarding small. He's capable of guarding big. He rotates around like crazy. He is so good on that end. So
he just gets up in you. He frustrates you. He will pick you up full court. As you mentioned, like there were so many times I went back and read my notes on him where it was frustrated this guy, frustrated that guy. And it's just like, if I'm being able to tell that watching just on video on, after the fact, what it looks like in person. Yeah. And again, we talked about this, like, get away from me. It feels like that's what Toumani does to players. And again, you talked about Tyrese Halliburton. He guards Austin Reeves. He guards Paolo. Like, it's across the board, the matchups he will take. And then he rebounds the ball. He'll take charges. He does it all. GMAC, you should know that he takes charges. Trivia question. We've talked about it. He is 36% from 3 overall, but like he averages over almost 2.5 offensive rebounds. Like, this is what I love about him. I love guys that know their role and will thrive in it. And again, he's one of those that I have ultimate confidence that he's going to be able to knock down corner catch and shoot opportunities, attack a closeout once he does it consistent, offensive rebound, cut, like everything you need him to do is that off ball, just space the floor player, along with everything we highlighted defensively.
He'll be 25 in May. I think that he is, for the next like 5 or 6 years, going to be one of the best defenders in the league. Just like straight up. He will make all defense teams. I don't know if it'll be this year yet, but like, he will make all defense teams. He is that good and he is that deserving. And oh, by the way, they signed him to a 4-year deal last summer. So they definitely have him for cheap next year at 2.2. And then they have him for 2.4 the following year if they want it, or they can just extend him off of that. Honestly, they could extend him this summer too if they wanted to. In fact, they might actually do that. If I was him, like,
what a pickup in that trade, Sam.
Unbelievable.
Like, can we talk about like this was all
by far the most valuable player in that trade? Like, all due respect to DeAndre, but like,
for the Blazers, you mean? I was like,
yeah. Well, Nurkic.
We know Damian Lillard got traded in this trade, right? But you're just saying, yeah, okay,
yeah, like the Nurkic for Ayton, like Camara piece of it, yeah, because that was like almost separate from anything else within that. I guess Allen was in there too, but yeah, like that piece of it. By far the most valuable player.
Hey, could the Phoenix Suns use Toumani Camara? I don't know.
By the way, that Suns scouting staff, like, evaluated and scouted and nailed the Toumani Camara pick. got fired this summer.
Yeah. I mean, that's not insane
Sharp,
value
right?
at 52.
Good work, right? Real smart decision making there by that front office. Unbelievable. Okay.
I mean, it's not like they have any draft picks. They should have just fired the department and not replaced it because they don't have any picks anyway.
It's pretty funny. Okay. So we haven't talked about like Gradey Dick, Jaime Jaquez, Anthony Black, Podziemski. Like, do you want to like speed round some of these guys? I guess Jaquez like is worth talking about because he was all rookie last year.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Pods has figured it out a little bit. I feel like his games before All-Star break were better. Who else did you mention there? Gradey Dick. I feel like we talked quite a bit about Gradey Dick throughout all of this. Yeah, where are you at on Jaquez this season? Like, I feel like it's I don't have a whole lot on him, even coming off the really good rookie season. Do you feel like there's been progress? What?
No, I think he's.
Yeah,
I think they're using him like slightly differently. I feel like they're not using him as much like as like a post mismatch guy. I don't know what the numbers say on that, but when I watch Heat games, like it doesn't feel like he's getting used as much like that, which is where like he was really fun last year, I thought, and like was really creative as a scorer.
We'd always bring it up that like as a rookie, they were running him in these isolations, right? Like that's what was impressive.
Yeah, and like the shooting has regressed. Like he's not making threes at this point this year. I don't know. Like I feel like if you're not going to have him out there to be like a scoring option as like a I think he's a backup at the end of the day. Like I think he's not going to be a starter. I think he's probably a bench player, and that's fine. Like that'll be totally a useful role. But I think you're going to have to like get creative in how you utilize him. And I don't know if like he's not going to be for every scheme. I don't think he works for Miami, but like I don't know if he's going to work across the board for everybody.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was one thing I felt last year with him was, and I felt this way a little bit about Pods as well. And it's not a knock on them, but it's like they landed in spots where
it really works.
Yes, their talent, their skill set, what they were good at, they ended up on teams that were willing to use that, and it made a lot of sense for them. I guess I haven't watched Heat games this year and thought, and obviously the percentages are down, so that's part of it. His minutes are actually down as well. I just haven't found myself thinking he was as impactful as what I felt like he was as a rookie. So,
in Podziemski, you know, his last 12, he missed those like 10 games or whatever with an abdominal strain. He has been better since he's been back. Like these 12 games, I think that like particularly having Jimmy around to be the secondary creator will really help him because he won't be tasked as much. He's just capable of, hey, I'm going to go out and, you know, make decisions and process it quickly and kind of go from there. Those 12 games since he's been back, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 47, 36, 75 again. Like, hopefully that's what it continues at. Again, though, like I think he's a backup. Like, I don't think he's a long-term starter to me.
I mean, Julian Strawther seems to be a very important player for the Nuggets.
Yes, sort of. Like,
I mean,
he's really good on offense, but man, like again, the defense is just it's hard to have him out there. I feel like a lot of the time.
Are they going to have a choice in the playoffs? Like, you got to play somebody.
I know. Look, he's been good over the last month. Like, he has been genuinely like double figures. I feel like more often than he hasn't been. But like, it's because he's hitting shots, and when he's hitting shots, he's useful. When he's not, you can't play him. Like it's inconsistent in that way.
It'll be interesting in the playoffs. I want to throw out a name, and have you seen any of the Jalen Clark stuff with Minnesota? I know this
a bit. Yeah.
The sample is the sample is small. The defense is good. I think more for me with him was like, I was curious what you had scouting wise on Jalen Clark. Like where were you at on him coming into that draft? I don't even know if I have notes at all. I wasn't doing it in depth enough. So I was just like, what did you think? Did you think any of it's sustainable? Like anything like that?
let's take a look,
Let's
Bryce. So I think I had Jalen Clark top 45-ish. Sounds right. Let's see. No, I had him at 51 because I think he tore the Achilles, right? Yeah. Tore his Achilles and declared for the draft anyway. Where did I have him? Perfect team defender, incredible anticipation, spent a lot of time, clearly spends a lot of time reading scouting reports, but also just has ridiculous reactivity. Pre-rotates like he knows what's coming. Preternaturally instinctive defensive player, stays big in passing lanes, gets around screens at an elite level, both on and off the ball, executes every technique from locking and trailing to fighting over the top, knows how to get through bodies without getting bumped, stays skinny and gets around technically, closes out incredibly well into offensive players, very light on his feet while maintaining a strong core and chest, never misses rotations, unbelievable scramble defender, has a case as the best perimeter defender in this class. Unbelievable on-ball defender. Footwork and feet are unbelievably good. Slides well and is incredibly difficult to get around. Directs players to where he wants them to go. A whole lot of that.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's what I know. That's what has Wolves fans excited, and watching some of those games, because I saw the tweets are going around about it. You see a lot of that defensive stuff, and then again, another one of these players, like how good can he be along the baseline? Can he make shots? Right now, he's at 38% on it's 9 of 24, but offensive rebound, cut, those type of things. And it just makes me wonder, like, okay, if he can really be this, does Na, is that the Na replacement for the Wolves moving forward if he's not back after this offseason?
Yep. No, I agree. Let's see here. Gradey Dick has been like strange this season.
Yeah.
Up and down, I would argue. I thought he looked really good early. I think he's looked less good as the season has kind of gone on, in all honesty. Just a very different player, I guess, than what I expected. Also, like coming out of Kansas, I kind of thought that he would be more of a like spacer and then be able to grow his game off of that, as opposed to like they use him as like an off-ball scorer where like the spacing isn't quite as critical. Over his last 20 games, he's at 11 points, 3 rebounds, 1.4 assists, shooting 40, 32, 86, and like only takes half of his shots from 3 this year as a whole. About half of his shots from 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was not expecting this to be his type of player. I do, one thing I like about him is just the way he's constantly moving and running off screens and all of that. I'm fascinated to see where his role ends up with this iteration of the Raptors. Like where do his reps come from? Where do his shots come from? Where does he fit into the hierarchy of all of this? Sorry, sidebar. Why is Bill Self playing Hunter Dickinson, Flory Badunga, and KJ Adams all together for any amount of minutes on a college basketball floor?
Because they completely misevaluated AJ Storr.
Okay, but
like
play a walk-on.
Funny.
You can't play 3 non-shooters like that. Listen, I don't mean to question Bill Self, but I had to like double take the other day. Like, no, I'm wrong. There's no way those 3 guys are on the court together.
It's a wild choice. It's definitely a wild ride. I want to see how often they're doing that. I feel like it's not that often.
No, it's not. The fact that it's more than 0 is more of my point. I haven't watched like every KU game anyway. Like, honestly, I'd only really turned it on because I wanted to get some notes on Flory, and then I wanted to get some notes on Zeke Mayo. And then
16 minutes they've played together this year.
That's 16 more minutes than what it should be, Sam.
But by the way,
don't give me a net rating. I don't care.
No. I mean, they lost those 16 minutes by 5. Like, who cares?
Okay.
They've played Laurie Badunga and KJ Adams together 155 minutes, and they've played Badunga and Dickinson 180 minutes together this year. They've won those minutes, to be clear, but like, I don't know, man. That still feels like it's not ideal.
That team is wild.
They're searching though. Like they're like Bill's clearly like trying to figure out like, like what the fuck do we do here with this team? I mean, look, hiring a GM in college basketball, you have to do it.
Yep.
You can't just be like relying on the analytics to recruit transfers. You can't be relying on like your coaching staff to be able to do it. It's hard. You have to have somebody dedicated to it. That's the only way it works now.
Yeah.
There's too much going on. By the way, Zeke Mayo this year, when he's on the court, do you know what their net rating is?
I'm assuming positive, like +5.
I don't know what their actual net rating is, I guess, but they are 10 points per 100 possessions worse when Zeke Mayo's on the court than when he's off the court.
Wow.
And then same with Rylan Griffin and same with AJ Storr. So like basically all of their like wingish perimeter players, Storr, they're 10 points per 100 possessions worse. Rylan Griffin, they're 8 points per 100 possessions worse. Zeke Mayo, they're 10 points per 100 possessions worse.
Interesting.
Shout out CBB Analytics while we're talking here. Like all of their guys that they evaluated and hoped would be good, like none of them have been good. None of them have worked out. So it's hard to know what to do, I guess, if you're Bill in that circumstance.
Fair enough. Wow.
Yeah, it's ugly. It's quite ugly, Bryce.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? I mean, Cam Whitmore, we haven't talked about, obviously. I mean, when Whitmore plays, and he's obviously played like a fairly decent amount now, super active on offense. I think he's getting better on defense. Like when you watch him, yeah, he's going to have to shoot it. Like he's shooting 31% from 3 this year. And a huge piece of his equation is shooting from 3. If you look, I think over the last little while here, it's been quite poor. Basically over his last like 15. I'll look that up while we're talking. But I mean, look, getting better on defense, switchable at least. The rotations are a question. He's going to blow some of those from time to time. But yeah, 29% from 3 over his last 14 is what it is. Yeah, looks like a bench player to me, but like could develop into a long-term starter. He is still incredibly young. He's still only 20 years old. But, you know, the hot start has cooled with Cam, unfortunately.
It's interesting. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I know everybody brings up the passing and all of that as their biggest worry. My biggest worry for him, like being on the court, and you're right, like he has to be able to actually score it. Like that's part of the game. It's actually the off-ball defense. I think that's my biggest worry. Like I think Cam Whitmore can guard you at the point of attack when he's locked in. I have more worries about just like off the ball defense, making the rotations, not giving up backdoors, stuff like that. Am I crazy for that being my actual biggest worry? Assuming he does shoot it and all of that, because again, he's got to be able to make shots. But the off ball defense worries me more than this like idea that he can't pass or never passes or can't read the floor or something like that. It's the off the ball defense for me.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think the passing has gotten a little bit better like throughout the course of the year. Like as he continues to play more, look, he's never going to be confused with a good passer.
No.
You know what I mean? Like that's never going to be what it is for Cam Whitmore, but like he's not as catastrophic as what it was like entering the league. It's not as disastrous as like what we've seen previously. He's averaging 1.5 assists in 20 minutes a night now, which is fine for like a scoring wing. He's playing more unselfishly. The passing is not it to me. You're 100% right. It's like the rotations defensively and being able to see like what's coming and what's out there across the court.
Yeah. Again, he's got to knock down shots, right? Like that's what his role is come in and get buckets. Assuming he does that, the thing that keeps him off the floor in the playoffs right now is the off the ball defense more than anything. And specifically in Houston, where we know it will be demanded to be good defensively. And I think he can guard at the point of attack. I think he has the tools and the ability to be good there. So that's where I'm at with Cam Whitmore is, can he grow as an off the ball defender and rotate and be in the right spot?
And then the other guy we haven't really talked about yet is the guy who went 6th overall, by the way, is Anthony Black. He's actually been like pretty useful over the last little while here for Orlando as they've dealt with like, injuries across the board kind of. I mean, I feel like every time that we've talked about Orlando this year, somebody is out of the lineup, right? He had 15 against Milwaukee in January. He had 17 against Philly. He had 13 against Boston, 14 against Denver, 17 against Toronto, 14 against Miami. He had 20 against San Antonio, and that game was actually really good. They needed all those points. I think it was like what was that? It's like a 3-point game, 1-point game. It was really tight, and they won it, like in large part because of like what he was able to do in that game. I continue to see signs of growth where I'm like, this is very good. He still can't shoot, and I have questions on whether or not that will ever happen. But man, I have been really impressed with just like the processing, the playmaking, the passing, the ability to consistently get paint touches. Like all of it is good.
Yeah, I think he does a nice job playing off 2 feet when he gets in there and has like some fun footwork and all of that. I think he'll be a really good player in the league if he starts knocking down the 3-point shot consistently. I was really high on his season coming in because I thought he was incredible at Summer League. I thought he looked awesome there. That Magic team, they also had Jay Huff, and I was just like, man, this team's really fun to watch. Got 2 guys that look like they're way better than should be playing at Summer League. So, and I think Anthony Black can be a very good defender as well. So, and then it's like, I'm always interested, like how much can he actually orchestrate the offense, play on the ball? I think he's a good off the ball cutter. He's a good athlete, good defender, like I said. So I think, I'm not discouraged by anything from him this season. It just really comes down to, like, is he going to be able to knock down shots at a good enough rate to stay on the floor? And he's another guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like within that core, particularly, where it's Franz and Paulo, like you really need to be able to shoot to be able to stay on the court consistently and like give them the offensive, oomph that they need. In his last 17, he's averaging 11, 3 and 3 in 27 minutes a night, shooting 44-33. I still feel like the actual finishing is not great, honestly. Like I guess I expected him to be a little bit further along there, but like the actual, like his gathers, his ability to like take bumps, maybe that is what will come as he gets stronger, is like his ability to take bumps and like potentially finish in traffic. I think that'd be really useful for him.
For what it's worth, B-Ball Reference has him down 6%, 0 to 3 feet with that finishing. So
it's interesting.
Yeah. Got to score the basketball, but I like a lot of the other stuff Anthony Black does.
Yeah, I do too. I really do too. Really good defender, really active, really, really sharp, like understands like where to be, really, really smart player. The other guy like this is Ben Sheppard. Like Ben Sheppard plays real minutes for a really good team in Indiana. And we have not like referenced him once in this show. Ben just looks like a really good, like rotational wing to me, like can sneak starts if you need him to, but more than that is like probably just like a guy that is in a rotation for quite a while now. But like, look, he's again, really smart defensively, knows where he needs to be, willing shooter, knocks down shots. It's kind of simple.
Yep. No, I'm with you. I literally, the first thing I pulls up, Ben Sheppard, NBA rotation player for me, always making impactful plays on both ends of the court. I think he's a guy that, he can be solid defensively. I don't think he's like going to jump into this all defense level conversation, make shots. I think he plays with the low center of gravity. He's a very interesting player to me that I don't think he's ever like a long-term starter for that team, maybe any team, but I think he is a real rotation wing that provides value.
Yeah. Trayce Jackson-Davis looks like a, backup center in the NBA. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, Jalen Wilson has played a ton of minutes for Brooklyn.
Max has gotten some minutes with all these injuries to Dallas, has played a little bit, plays really, really hard.
He's gotten a little bit of run.
I will say it looks
Jordan
like
Hawkins. Like you're a Hawkins guy.
I am. Yeah. Jordan Hawkins, a guy I'm a huge fan of. It's with Hawk, it's always going to come down to making shots, right? Like I believe in the ability to run off screens and put pressure on the defense that way and all of that. That's truly what it's going to come down to for him is being able to, he's got to be a high level shooter. In his rookie season, he made 37% on almost 300 attempts. He's at 33% right now. I know he's dealt with some injury stuff this year, but it'll be interesting to see what like the Pelicans prioritize down the stretch of this season. And if I was them, getting Jordan Hawkins looks, running him through these things, probably, an off the bench guy. But, how impactful can that be? I don't think he's the guy that's ever going to shy away from the usage. So I would give him some of that.
Final guy here would be Gigi Jackson. Missed the first half of the year, obviously. Has played 12 games. It feels like they are committed to giving him some real run.
Yep.
Has had really positive games. Like he had a great game against San Antonio and had a really good game against Utah. Really has also had some negative ones too, I think.
Yeah.
And
I watched one against
I
watched one against the Rockets at the end of January where it was not good. Ill-advised attempts, was getting attacked off the bounce by Dylan Brooks, more ill-advised shots and over dribbling. I think the biggest thing with Gigi, he's like going to have to figure out how to like settle into a role with the stars on the floor now and what that means for him and his attempts and stuff like that.
Yeah, just has in no way, shape, or form done that, I feel like, to this point. Their defense also is like completely fallen off of a cliff with Gigi on the court this year, which is concerning. But he also hasn't played a lot of minutes, I believe, with Jaren. So that is also right. Okay. I was going to mention like Marcus Sasser looks like out of the rotation in Detroit with the addition of Dennis Schroeder. So he is a first round pick from that class, 25 overall, was getting minutes. And I don't think will play unless somebody is out of the lineup, which is interesting. So, yeah, Andre Jackson, another name. Nick Smith Jr.'s shown like some flashes recently.
He's confident. He is confident. If nothing, he hit a big one last night, man. In that win, that Hornets win over the Lakers, he hit a big one from the corner late in that game. So,
yep. Trying to think like anybody else. I don't know that I have notes on anybody else like really in depth. I mean, like Andre Jackson is still useful. He's really good on defense and is a real question on offense. Processes it quickly. Hopefully the offense comes at some point. Okay, Bryce, we're not doing trivia. We're not doing Rec Center tonight. We've gone for 2 hours. Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yep. So at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, Motor City Hoops Substack. One thing I'll shout out real quick this time, guys. I just did like a 20-minute Cade Cunningham ball screen video breakdown. So if you're just a fan of the NBA in general or whatever, I would recommend that. Don't even have to subscribe to the Substack. Just go check it out. So motorcityhoops.substack.com. Go check that out. It's on my Twitter and Blue Sky. But was pretty proud of what I did with that little video breakdown there, just breaking down everything that makes Cade really good in the ball screen and some areas of growth. The Pistons Pulse podcast, otherwise right here with Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. What else do we have coming up here? On Sunday, Bryce and I will be back. We will talk through some things. We don't have anything on the channel for tomorrow, I don't think. We'll probably just have a couple of random shit going up. Maybe Andrew will pull some clips. Who else? What else? Not sure we've got anything else here. We'll do Rec Center next Thursday. Oscars will be coming up. I've seen all 10 of the Best Picture nominees. I think I'm through all but Better Man in terms of like the Oscar nominated feature films at this point. So we'll get through there.
What are the chances I've seen any of them?
Any of the Oscar nominated movies this year.
So how many are there?
There's probably like 30-ish.
Oh.
Like something like that. The Best Picture nominees, I think very low chance. Best Picture nominees 2025. So you've not seen Emilia Perez.
No.
You have not seen Nickel Boys. Did you see Dune Part 2?
I've seen no, not that one. No.
Did you see Wicked?
No.
Yeah, Anora, No Chance.
Okay, hold on.
Brutalist,
This
No
stop.
Chance.
This is a stupid endeavor. I don't know that I watched a movie in 2024 that was from 2024. We're wasting our time. I refuse to go.
Deadpool and Wolverine is not nominated. Did you see that?
I thought Deadpool 1 was stupid, so there was 0% chance I was watching the second one.
Have you seen Inside Out 2 with your kids?
No. I don't
Okay.
take my kids to the movies, like my sister-in-laws or my mom or my mother-in-law. I haven't been to a movie theater in years.
Yeah, but like Inside Out 2, I think is on like Disney Plus.
So that would be the only
like,
chance was
yeah.
something that came out that we went ahead and watched.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a waste of time. There's no chance. I'm sorry. That was stupid. My bad.
Let me look at the other animated nominees. Like animated, I feel like is the only one where you're gonna have a shot. And no, The Wild Robot, like that was a big one this year.
So I know that one because they promoted it really big during Big Brother, but I did not watch.
Yeah, that one's good.
I've heard it's really good.
Yeah. And Flow. I would also strongly recommend watching Flow. It is amazing. But yeah, let's get out of here. We're going to do Rec Center for the Oscars next week with Andrew. I had a question here from Walker. Got to know if you got the new criterions for No Country for Old Men or the Arrow for Inglourious Bastards. Have not bought No Country yet. We'll wait until I go over in July to do that, probably. Into the United States. It's hard to get criterions here. I have the Inglourious Bastards though. I did. Decided to get that. Have you seen Inglourious Bastards, Bryce?
I have not.
Yeah, it's a good one. Would recommend it. Brad Pitt is in that one. About World War II. Let's go with.
I'm actually familiar with this one, just have not watched it. So
yeah. Good one. It's an enjoyable movie. Would say that it is worth seeing. Okay. That's all we got. Until next time, we'll talk soon.